Eastern Oregon, a rural oasis from the big cities on the western half of the Beaver State. For months, many residents to the east have demanded a divorce, creating the so-called Greater Idaho movement. They're so fed up, they propose moving the state border so they can become Idahoans.
You'd become Idaho?
Yes.
Even though you're fifth-generation Oregonian?
Yes.
Many feel those in Salem are not listening and don't care. So we launched a listening tour to Eastern and Northeast Oregon to hear from residents themselves. From the culture in the small town of John Day.
What goes on here is night and day different than what goes on in Portland. It's a whole different experience.
To hearing from the Grant County Sheriff on the way things operate in his neck of the woods.
I have driven my patrol car 100 miles an hour for an hour and stayed inside the county to get to a call.
To the issues top of mind for a rancher after wolves killed his dog just outside his home.
What's going to kill him if it's not for a human? You know, you're not going to have, my cows aren't going to go out there in a group and go stomp a wolf. Maybe if I was lucky.
But not everyone is ready to say goodbye to the rest of Oregon.
So if there was a vote tomorrow to become part of Idaho for Grant County, would you say yes or no?
I would say no.
So what are the issues causing such a fractured state of mind? And is there a middle ground?
We can't agree on anything, it seems like.
That's what we're hoping to find out. Here's the story. Oregon is at a point of crisis, something that's been growing for decades, the urban-rural divide. Folks out here in central and eastern Oregon are so frustrated that if there was a vote tomorrow to move the border with Idaho, many would vote yes. Now, we don't think that'll ever happen, but it does show you how frustrated they are. And there is a deep, burning anger. A lot of folks out here feel that the cities are so big, they can pass any law they want that may work for the cities, but has statewide consequences, and that they can't stop it no matter what. They feel like nobody's listening. So we've decided to come out and hear what they have to say in an effort to amplify their voices. The Greater Idaho movement, which is pushing the change, is no joke. 11 of Oregon's 15 eastern counties have essentially voted yes to redraw the state boundaries between Oregon and Idaho. It would make much of eastern Oregon part of Idaho. We drove 5 hours from Portland to the town of John Day in Grant County, hoping to gain some understanding of what's fueling the movement, to see why so many in the east want to divorce the west side of the state, to learn if the relationship between urban and rural Oregon can be saved.
Yeah, Eastern Oregon's filing for divorce.
Mike Slinkard is a lifetime resident of Grant County. He's also an entrepreneur and has his own bow hunting show that runs on a cable channel.
With waterfowl hunting becoming ever more popular and gobbling turkeys being the highlight of the spring hunting season, you're going to want to pay special attention to today's show. So sit back and relax and come hunting with us at Hunting with Hex.
He's convinced that most who live in Oregon's big cities have no idea how different the culture is out here.
What goes on here is night and day different than what goes on in Portland. It's a whole different experience.
Mike's world headquarters are located on a bluff overlooking the town of John Day. The walls of his office boast trophy heads, animals that he's killed as a bow hunter. He does not expect urban viewers to understand.
My grandfather and uncle actually were cattle ranchers up in the Monument area, which is North Grant County. And then my dad and his father were all loggers. So, you know, I've got kind of both sides of the spectrum for Eastern Oregon, I guess.
And you're third generation?
Yep, third generation Oregonian.
How do you feel about Oregon?
You know, up until about 10 years ago, I felt great about it. I was a proud Oregonian. You know, back in, around 2000 when we were starting my original businesses, the state was actually very, very helpful. But, you know, now, you know, to us, there's a lot of sort of craziness going on in the state. You know, we're getting laws passed that we don't agree with. We really don't feel like we have a lot of representation. You know, we're getting taxed way more than we ever have before. And as a business person, it makes it very difficult to be located here. If I didn't have my roots so deep in Grant County, I'd probably be in Idaho already, to be honest with you. But I have my elderly parents I'm taking care of here and things like that. So.
Not everyone is ready to leave.
Welcome to Prairie City School.
13 miles to the east of John Day sits the small town of Prairie City.
Okay, are you ready?
Its only school houses kids from preschool through the 12th grade.
Rectangular prism. Can we all say that?
Many love the rural culture here. Teachers are understanding about kids showing up late. Many live on ranches or farms and have morning chores. Sometimes the birth of a cow or goat makes them tardy. And there are other cultural differences from the West Side urban schools here. Livestock, including the school's cows, are not pets.
They know that those animals are going to go to a butcher shop. They know that someone's going to eat them. So it's a whole different mindset opposed to something that you'd have in your backyard, or it's just different.
Amanda Rockhill is a teacher and the leader of the school's Future Farmers of America program. Her students raise the school's cows and pigs.
It's JC's dad, the girl we just talked to. Her dad donated these 2 hogs for our program. These 2 will be butchered, and the meat will be going to our cafeteria for our entire school to eat.
The differences between Eastern Oregon and Western Oregon are many. To get a sense for small town Oregon, you need to know that everybody knows everybody. You can't get away with anything. And even on Main Street, you can leave your nice F-150 running with no one inside. In all of Grant County, there is just one stoplight. It's right here in downtown John Day. Kathy Gill is a server in town. She has a second job working with adults with disabilities. She loves her part of Oregon.
I honestly feel that we should just have our own Eastern Oregon. When you come over to Eastern Oregon, people say, oh, this is really pretty, it's Oregon. No, we're Eastern Oregon. That's where we're at. It's what we call it. And it's God's country. It's what we've always called it.
She's on the fence about whether she supports the Greater Idaho movement, but like many I met, she's certain that urban leaders on the West Side, including the governor, do not care about East Side opinions.
I think she should come and listen to everyone and get everybody's opinions, but I still don't think it's going to change their mind. I don't. I think they take care of the city people. The votes are there. You can see it. We don't have much of a say when it comes to any part of voting.
From a political perspective, she is correct that the big cities in Oregon elect the governor and other top political leaders. Take a look at the results of the 2022 election for governor. The red shows counties that voted for the Republican Christine Drazan. In Grant County, Drazan got 3,145 votes. That's 75% of all the votes cast in that county. Democrat Tina Kotek got 576 votes, just 14%. But the lopsided percentages did not matter one bit. The blue counties, with their densely packed populations, voted for Democrat Tina Kotek and made her governor. In Multnomah County alone, Kotek got nearly 266,000 votes. That's far more than the entire populations of the 8 counties considered Eastern Oregon by the state's employment department. They only have a total of 191,000 people. Which brings us back to bow hunter Mike Slinkert. He and others worry about statewide laws that might make sense for the cities, but not the country.
We're hardworking people. We use diesel trucks, and it's a long ways between places, and we have to travel. And some of the stuff that's coming down the pike we see it's going to be hard to deal with. As a matter of fact, it'd be impossible to deal with some of it out here.
He's referring in part to bills in the Oregon legislature that focus on diesel fuel. The fuel runs everything from pickup trucks to farm equipment, logging equipment, and more. It's also the focus of many who want to cut carbon emissions in Oregon and fight global warming. 2 of the 3 bills targeting diesel in the Oregon legislature will not become law this time. But there is a third that worries many, SB 803. With few exceptions, it would outlaw regular diesel statewide in Oregon and require the sale of only renewable diesel by the year 2030.
We care about the environment as much as anybody. We live in it, and we're probably closer to the land than most urban people as well. So we care about it, but at the same time, you've got to recognize cultural differences and recognize how people have to make a living in different places.
So the reason we're in Eastern Oregon is to talk to people about why they're so angry about the state and that they would vote to go to Idaho if the vote was tomorrow. And how would you vote on that?
I would vote yes. I'd vote Yes, all day long, twice on Sunday if they let me.
Okay, now why? Let's drill into that.
Well, you know, the difference now between Eastern and Western Oregon is just so vast. I mean, I go to Western Oregon, I don't even recognize what it used to be. You know, we're conservatives over here. We are conservative thinking. We're kind of, I mean, you might call us old school maybe even, but you know, just philosophically, we match Idaho. We no longer match Oregon. There's just such a divide.
It feels like a marriage that has been in trouble for a long time.
It really angers people because we're just not listened to. They might come and visit and see it, but they don't want to solve the issues or the problems.
Is there anything the state could do to make you feel different? What would it take?
If there was something that we could do, I think we'd be trying to do it. And I'm not sure what that is at this point. I think the divide just feels so huge. It's just like we don't agree on what's white and what's red almost, you know. We can't agree on anything, it seems like. We feel like we're divorcing the west side of Oregon, we really do. You know, and in any divorce situation, one of the first things you need to do is come to the table and see if you can patch it up. And that seems to be something that we're really lacking right now. Most people out here we just feel like the west side doesn't care. Until we can talk, it's not gonna work.
Maybe it's not too late.
So it sounds like you're frustrated, but you haven't at least given up on the possibility the relationship might still survive.
Well, if there was some effort, and I think our side would be willing to put that forth effort, but right now there's no reason. We don't feel like there's a reason for them to give effort because, like I said, it really is an us and them thing.
Mike had some other specific things that make him angry, like the capital gains tax and gun control law, Measure 114, and the drug decriminalization law, Measure 110. But the overall sense I got was that lack of political power. That's one of the biggest frustrations out there. And many who support Greater Idaho feel that state would fit their values better than Oregon. Now, tomorrow night, we're going to talk with the second in command for the Greater Idaho movement and see if there's anything that can be done to stop the divorce that so many want from Oregon's big cities. In the meantime, I'd love to hear from you. What are your thoughts on this urban-rural divide? Do you have any solutions? Our email is thestory@kgw.com or call and leave us a voicemail, 503-226-5090. I look forward to hearing from you. Still to come on The Story, the bodies of a 27-year-old mother and her 7-year-old daughter were found last week in a rural area near Washougal. And the man considered a person of interest in their disappearance was out on bail for a murder in the state of Arkansas. Is this another example of the failures within the criminal justice system? We'll take a look at the timeline laid out in court documents when The Story returns.
To Vancouver now, where we want to dig a little bit deeper into a recent case that you've likely heard about. We're talking about the deaths of 27-year-old Michelle Melendez and her 7-year-old daughter, Layla. Two bodies matching their descriptions were found in a rural area near Washougal last week, and the medical examiner is expected to confirm their identities sometime this week. Yesterday, hundreds of people came together for a vigil to remember the mother and daughter. So far, no arrests have been made in connection with their deaths. But police have identified Kirkland Warren, Michelle's off-again, on-again boyfriend, as a person of interest. Court documents show he was the last person seen with them before they went missing. Warren's accused of previously assaulting Michelle and shooting at her apartment. Court documents also show he tried pressuring her into dropping the charges against him. And Warren is no stranger to the law. He's been out on bail since 2017 for a long-delayed murder trial in the state of Arkansas. And that, of course, begs the question, why on earth was a guy like this released from custody in Clark County after being arrested for a serious domestic violence offense when he was already facing a murder charge in another state? Oh my goodness. Well, let's break this down chronologically to better understand what happened. And I should point out, so far, Warren has not been charged in connection of the deaths of Michelle and Layla, but he is a person of interest. Let's go back to mid-December of 2022. That's when Warren and Michelle argued at her apartment. Records show that's when Warren left and then shot at her window while Michelle was looking outside. 10 days later, she called 911 to report that incident, and then 5 weeks later, law enforcement interviewed a friend of Michelle's who was at the apartment and backed up her story of the shooting. But Michelle tried to then change her story when she met with investigators. And according to court documents, she said that she lied about the shooting and that both her and her friend have mental health and drug issues, and that's the reason that they lied. The documents show Michelle did not want Warren arrested, which, rightly, is a big red flag for investigators. March 2nd, Warren was arrested by Vancouver police based on Michelle's original story. The next day, he made his first court appearance on several charges. During that appearance, prosecutors said a danger assessment, listen to this, found that Warren posed an extreme risk to Michelle, scoring a 31 on an exam that had a scale of 1 to 18. So quite literally, off the charts dangerous. Prosecutors brought up the murder trial from Arkansas as well. And it's at this point that you could argue that prosecutors and the judge probably should have kept Warren in custody. Active homicide case in another state, off the charts danger risk to someone who's previously alleged domestic violence? That would seem like it'd be enough. But instead, prosecutors asked for $100,000 bail, and it was granted, meaning that Warren could get out by paying 10% of that, which is 10 grand. But here is the key to those of you shaking your head, as I was when I first looked into this. The state of Washington law presumes that someone will be released from custody until they are tried and convicted, except in cases of aggravated murder. Courts can impose other conditions like bail or electronic monitoring to help ensure public safety, but the fact that releasing someone is sort of the legal default, that's the key point here. And yes, the court ordered bail, and Judge Suzanne Clark also ordered Warren to stay away from Michelle and not contact her in any way. But 10 grand in a court order saying don't talk to her, those were apparently no big deal for Warren. Documents show that just hours after that hearing, he violated the no contact order by calling Michelle twice from the county jail. He told her that she was responsible for his arrest and that she needed to get the charges dropped. And then later that same day, Warren posted bail but was not released, not quite yet. He was cited in a different court for violating that no contact order. When he appeared in court for that citation, a Vancouver sergeant asked the judge to order Warren to wear a GPS monitor and to give him a higher bail. Judge Kristen Parcher agreed and ordered $10,000 bail and electronic monitoring. But the following day, the Columbian reports that case was dismissed and the charges later were added to the first case involving the gunshot. As it turns out, Warren was not fitted with that GPS monitor before the case was dismissed. The following day, he was released on bail that he had paid with no way to track him. So on March 8th, Kirkland and Warren is back out on the street. And according to court documents, he was also back with Michelle and Layla. 10 days later, the two were reported missing. Warren was arrested the 19th and in court on the 20th, and that is finally when Arkansas authorities revoked Warren's bail for that old murder case. He, in the meantime, has refused now extradition to Arkansas, and so he's being held without bail in Vancouver. On March 22nd, the bodies presumed to be Miche and Layla were found in a ditch near Washougal. So, to recap one more time. According to Miche, Warren shot at her in mid-December. She reported that to police. Then she tried to change her story, which is not unusual at all for domestic violence victims. Police believe her first statement and arrested Warren on March 2nd. Arkansas authorities were notified that same day that their guy who faced a murder charge had been arrested. Seems like a couple of emails could have locked him down for good within a couple of hours, but that did not happen. It took until March 14th for the official paperwork from Clark County to reach the Arkansas prosecutor, and it took until March 20th for the judge there to revoke his bail. And by then, Warren had been released, and Miche and Layla were found dead 2 days later. So, what can be done? During yesterday's vigil, Democratic Representative Sharon Wiley of Vancouver said there needs to be no bail for people who are obviously dangerous. And here's my opinion. I totally agree. This case with Warren and the deaths of Miche and Layla expose all kinds of issues with the justice system. Unfortunately, we can't just wave our magic wand and fix them all. That would be nice. But something does need to be done. A violent domestic abuser, especially one that scored so high on that danger assessment, should not be out on bail. Period. If the law needs to change to keep someone like that locked up, then the law needs to change now. There needs to be more done for domestic violence victims. They need support in wake of what they've been through. And if they had to rely on their abuser in some way, financially or otherwise, they need help in order to get away and stay away. And the process needs to move so much faster. It's astounding that it took so long for the Arkansas court to revoke Warren's bail. I don't know who dropped the ball, but that should never happen again. If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, by the way, call or text the number that's on your screen there. It's 1-800-799-7233. That's the number for the National Domestic Violence Hotline. That could be a first step if you're unsure where to turn. The number again, 1-800-799-7233. Coming up next on The Story, we're heading into the KGW vault to look back at the tsunami that hit the Oregon coast 59 years ago today. It was born out of the largest earthquake to hit North America, a record that still stands. More footage from the mid-60s when The Story returns.
Coming up at 6:30, a violent weekend in Portland leaves 3 people dead. It's terrible wherever it happens. I mean, it's not just us, it's all of Portland.
A North Portland community reeling from a shooting that happened in the middle of the day. Plus, Hot Lips Pizza is a Portland institution, but 3 of its locations are now closed for good. The owner explains what went into the tough decision. We'll see you at 6:30.
We'll look forward to that, Laurel. 59 years ago today marks a warm day full of sun along the North Oregon coast. But during the evening hours around sunset, news began to arrive of a large earthquake along the southern coast of Alaska. And the subsequent tsunami was headed straight to the west coast of these United States. A deadly threat in the darkness that hit the town of Seaside especially hard. It was March 27th, 1964. And for today's anniversary, we're headed to the KGW vault and a 1976 report by Evan Smith, and looking back on the quake and its aftermath.
1964 brought more than its share of natural disasters. On Good Friday of that year, an earthquake hit Alaska, sending a tidal wave as far south as Crescent City, California. The hardest hit areas were Anchorage and Kodiak. The quake registered 8.5 on the Richter scale, greater in intensity than the San Francisco quake in 1909. That took the lives of 500 people. Fewer lives were lost in Alaska because fewer people lived there. In downtown Anchorage, bulldozers were brought in to clear away the rubble. Ham operators were the only link with the outside world. 4,000 people lived in the fishing village of Kodiak. Most of the town was demolished. Fishing boats were left high and dry. Kodiak's new boat harbor was smashed. And so were 3 of the 5 king crab canneries. Tidal waves from the quake caused damage on the west coast as far south as Crescent City, California. At Seaside, Oregon, logs and cars smashed against homes. At Walport, waterfront facilities were obliterated. Near Depot Bay, 4 children of a Washington couple were lost when the wave struck on the beach on which they were sleeping. Fortunately, most coastal residents have been given warning of the approaching seismic wave.
That's Ivan Smith reporting back in the day. All right, keep sending your questions and comments to the story at kgw.com. We'll finish the show right after this. The KGW Great Food Drive has only a few days left, You've helped provide over 1.9 million meals so far. You're incredible. Last year, as many as 1 in 8 Oregonians sought food assistance. You can help by visiting kgw.com/food drive. We also want to thank Rivermark Community Credit Union, Pacific Office Automation, Safeway, and local Toyota dealers for supporting this year's food drive. That's the end of our show. Thanks so much for watching. And remember, the story, our story, well, that never ends. I'll see you